Welcome to 5 Minute Fridays. My name is John Putnam. In this video, we're going to talk about restaking a few things that we have in this garden that need to remain staked for a little while longer, but I'm concerned that, the previous stakes are maybe doing damage to the plant. So this is a good time of year before things leaf out to make these assessments. So I've got 4 different plants we're going to look at. And then I have a major repair of another one that I'm going to do in a separate video, repairing a vitex, which is on a lean and requires a more corrective measure to it. But I have several things in the garden. This hydrangea paniculata, I've been in the process of tree forming. So when we got this, it was about this tall. Got this, Dr. Durr gave it to us 3 years ago or so, and I slowly but surely am turning it into a tree. And you can see I've gotten, the branching is now up to here, and I'm 6 feet tall, so it's 6.5 feet tall or so. It continues to need to be staked maybe for one more season, and I think it will have enough caliper, enough thickness in the bottom trunk of it to hold it upright without worrying about having it staked. But what I want to do is, use this stretch tie, and we'll probably use some zip ties on something else. But I want to go through here and make sure I get these old ones off before they do any significant damage. I had a plant last year that I forgot to do this with, and it almost girdled it completely, a Chinese snowball viburnum over there. So I want to go through here. Plus, this stretch tape, it's plastic, and it's out here in the sun, and it will disintegrate over time. So even if it's not girdling the plant, at some point it will potentially just break anyway. There's another one down here that had broken in the past, and they had not taken off. So got all those taken off. I want to make sure that my stake is pretty straight, that the plant's pretty straight where I want it, and then I'll reattach some of this. You can use this green stretch tie. It comes in different thicknesses, and it's usually pretty good about stretching over time and not cutting your plants, but there's a limit to that, right? Again, it's plastic, and it's not necessarily, you can double tie it like this. It's probably the best way to go. So do one side and then just go over to the other side, with a single piece. I just tore that, but that's good. So that's firmly on there. I want to make sure it's firmly up against that post so that it doesn't sit there and shake all season and wear a bad spot on it. This trunk is not completely straight, and it won't ever be completely straight, nor am I so worked up about it that I care all that much, but I want to keep it reasonably straight and not have the plant tip over while it still doesn't have a lot of thickness down here. We want to do this in several spots and try to pick different spots than you used the previous year. We don't want to keep wearing at the same spot on the tree, but this is the best material to use, again, because it'll stretch. As we gain caliper on this year, it'll stretch a little bit. It'll leave a little indentation on it, but I find as soon as you take it off and replace it, then by the next year, you won't even know that it ever had worn any spot on it. There are various other ways that you could do this probably without wearing on it at all, by putting something around it and then tying this on there. But that stretch tie works perfect. Literally every nursery, virtually every nursery in America uses some version of this. And then, so that's the hydrangea. It's tied in 3 spots. It's very firm in the ground. The stake is pounded in the ground pretty far, and it's good to go for now. Here's the spot on that Chinese viburnum that was completely worn out by that stretch tie that I forgot to remove. There are a lot of situations where you can find yourself needing to stake up something like this. You can have, a lot of times now in nurseries, they really push trees really hard and put them close together so that they can gain a lot of height on them, but then they send them out and without a lot of caliper on the tree, so it's this big around and it's this tall. And you find that the thing is just wispy like this, and the first storm you get, you either have the potential for it to break or uproot or whatever. So that's how you end up staking something like that. And then of course there's things like Japanese maples, or where I'm training a couple tree forms, so that process, I definitely want to try to keep that trunk straight, because it's not necessarily a tree. I mean, it's a shrub typically, and I needed to get single trunk on it. And then Japanese maples, which are, tend to be very valuable. We're trying to stake them straight and make sure that we're not losing our $300 or $400 plant or whatever to some sort of storm or that kind of thing while it initially gets in place and ends up with a very straight trunk. And then the occasional thing comes along that I have to stake forever. And that's this weeping redbud. It just, these redbuds are grafted. It's grafted down here at the bottom, and then a piece of this weeping tree was staked up straight for an entire season, and then it was cut off up here at the top, and then it allowed to weep down. Well, that trunk still has a weeping, kind of a weeping tendency to it, and I find that it just will not stay up straight without some sort of permanent staking. So I have this very large as the tree itself, stake that I've hammered into the ground here. I got this thing from Lowe's. It's probably a 2-inch diameter stake. It's a 1.5 feet or more down into the ground. Luckily, it's held up for, this is going into its 3rd season. This stretch tie will not hold this tree up at all. So I have to use zip ties, and I just want to cut them off and relocate them every year. And they don't dig in bad. I mean, you would think that these stretch ties would just do significant damage here. And I can see a mark right there, but it's almost nothing because I'm, again, trying to remember to change them. Once this thing leaves out, I can't see these. I can't see the stake, and I can't see this, and I'll forget about it. So this is why I'm telling you, go around right now while you can see all these things in your garden. Maybe you've added trees over the last couple years or whatever that are staked. Maybe it's time to remove the stake. You may be able to cut them off and just kind of feel it and go, I think it's okay on its own now, and go ahead and remove them. Or like me, you may have something that's got to continue to be staked, and we just want to get them in a slightly different spot than they were before. I'm taking one of these off at the time because it will bend. It's unfortunate that it's that way, but even then, when I cut that, it just, I can feel it moving. I can use 3 on this. I think I probably had 3 on it at some point. Oh yeah. These are too short, so you can buy a zip tie, obviously, that's long enough, or you can just, daisy chain them together like this, and that ends up big enough to go around the tree and the trunk. But these are, I think 8 are these 6-inch ones, and I put 2 of them together, so that's almost 1 foot long. If I had to do 3, I'd do 3. If I needed to do 4, I'd probably just buy a longer one. But again, I'm just trying to find a slightly different spot. It was right here. I'm moving it down to here. I'm pulling it together just a bit, and then tightening it down. Okay, and these hold well. And I think I'll just go with 2 again this year, but you see it bending away from the top up here. It just is what it is. This is how this tree grows. Nobody knows it. During the season, this thing has leaves this big around, big giant heart-shaped leaves, and all of that's covered up, and no one ever knows it's staked up other than us. And I'll cut them off again next February and replace them. Here's another reason you can end up staking something. Something happened to the roots on this hot blonde Japanese maple last winter. We have no idea what happened. We left for a month or so last November and came back, and this thing was laying over on its side. Something had damaged the roots on it. And so I staked it, and I put the stretch tie on it, the green stretch tie, same as what we saw on the hydrangea over there, okay? And I staked it up this way because it was falling that way. Well, I've had it staked now for a year. Now it's actually leaning that way. It's firmly in the ground now, but I pulled it so far that way that it's now leaning that way. So I'm gonna pull this stake up. It's still in it's not in the best of shape. It actually just broke off down there at the bottom. I'm gonna try to find a spot between the roots on this side. This can be the tricky part, is I don't want to put this stake down through a root on this plant. So I'll try to find a soft spot near it, okay, just by hand before I actually push the thing down in the ground, okay? And I can put it down in the ground. I'll find the spot with the stake, and then take some sort of mallet, probably wear eye protection, always. That'll be the comment below. Jim always forgets to wear eye protection. But now I've got it on the side that it needs to be. I haven't damaged a root because I looked for a spot where I could push it down in there before I started just hammering away at it. And then I'll just use the stretch tie on this. It doesn't need that much to pull it back up. I'll get another year out of this stake. You may need a hand with this. Hold on, I got it. But you may find that having someone, help you squeeze the thing up against there will help you do this. And I'll just hit it in a couple spots. We'll leave it here for another year. It was pretty sturdy just then, so it wasn't too bad. And again, I don't need something perfectly straight. I'm not going to sit here and overanalyze this to the point where I'm stressing myself out about whether it's straight or not. I just don't want it to fall over again. Give it one more year to make sure it's re-anchored from whatever chewed the roots or rotted the roots or wind. I don't know what it was. May have just been whipped around a bit before it fell over, but now it'll be in good shape, and I'm pulling it the proper direction again. The Amelanchier ends up staked because of what I told you about folks growing trees a little faster than we probably should ask of them. So, this thing just had no caliper on it when we started, and it had a big giant top on it, and it immediately bent over some. Then a secondary problem kicked in, is where I'm standing, there was a red maple at the beginning of this project. It was taken out and the stump was ground and most of the material was gone, but there was still enough here that the tree actually settled on one side last year. And we had gotten to the point where it didn't seem like it was going to need to be staked, and then all of a sudden the whole thing leaned over. The roots on this side came up, out of the ground because it leaned over like that, because I think it just settled over here behind it. That happens. This tree is a heavy enough caliper that I either need to use some sort of metal stakes here, and then I could use some sort of heavy twine and maybe a piece of water hose that I could wrap around this and then tie the rope through that so that, I can hold it in place that way. There's a lot of different ways to tie things up. Again, I'm just going to use these. They've done zero damage to this tree right here. That was on there for an entire year, did no damage to it. There's a mark where it was, but that's it. All I'm trying to do today is move it to a new location so that it doesn't do any damage as this thing adds some caliper this year. And it was right there, so now it's going to be there. Simple as that. Really not a significant change here. And I'm not going to put it super tight. I'm going to give it a little bit of room to add a little bit of caliper this spring without it hurting it. But again, I don't want it falling over again. It's already fallen over 2 times. And I can, again, put 3 on here is probably the safest version of this. But I'm just daisy chaining these together and boom. And I'm not trying to make this super, super tight. That should be good enough to hold it. And I could come up here again and add a 3rd one. And I'll do that just for a little security right up here. May not be quite big enough, and I don't want to do it too close to where I did it last year, so let's do it right there. Okay, I think this will be the last year that I have to do this one, but there you go. It's staked in place straight. I'm using this really heavy post again that I found at Lowe's. It's a circular post, maybe 2-inch diameter, hammered down in the ground about 1.5 feet. This Vitex I'm going to do in a separate video on the HortTube channel. I let this top of this plant get so heavy that it started to pull itself over, and I didn't catch it in time, but it's uprooted. It's pulling the roots up on this side and collapsing down on that side. So I'm gonna have to just wrench this thing up, and I'm gonna have to put 2 like metal posts here, and then we'll just wrench it up a little bit at the time. And then it needs significant pruning up in the top of it. That'll be part of the same video. So this is the kind of thing that's on the weekly garden planner, where we just give these kind of updates on what we should be thinking about, what we should be doing in the garden. This time of year, before things leaf out, you still have the opportunity to find invasive weeds that are out here and restake things like I'm doing today, and just generally find some things that you will not be able to find once things are leafed out, nor do some people feel comfortable reaching into shrubs that are, fully leafed out. Right now you can see the ground below them and feel comfortable working around it, that you're not getting bitten by something or something like that. So there you go. There's the 5-Minute Friday on restaking plants. Thanks for watching.